What's
Dude,
going on?
man, I'll tell you what, it's been a wild ride, and we still got to hold on, Brian. You know it's going to keep going.
Yeah, no one likes a know-it-all unless the know-it-all tells them something that's going to make them money or save them money. Like I had this guy call me the other day, and he said, hey, I wanted you to sell my house, but this other agent called me up and said she can get me this much more money. So I said, here's the thing, man. Like, I've sold every single house I've listed over the past 3 years with like two exceptions. This person only sells about 50 to 60% of the listings that she takes. There's no like skin that says that if somebody doesn't sell your house that there's any like repercussions. Like the realtor's not gonna pay you money if they can't sell your house. Like they say they're going to, but those people are just doing gimmicks. And he was like, all right, fine. And, I listed this house. Well, guess what? It just went under contract at exactly what I said.
Wow.
And I texted him because this was like 6 months ago. And I texted him and I was like, listen, I try to keep it real. And, I feel like you and I had a discussion about a year ago and we were talking about interest rates going up. And I think that, whether it's wishful thinking, which is part of it, people that have what they think is, because I think the other thing is you can go on the internet today and type in will there be a housing crash? What's the future of the interest? And what's the future of the housing market? You're going to find people that are absolutely experts, absolutely convinced, backed by data, backed by historical, this, that, and the other, that can prove that the market's going to go up or the market's going to go down or the market's going to crash or there's going to be foreclosures or there won't be foreclosures or whatever.
Right.
So we did a video last year and we talked about interest rates going up. And everybody was like, no, they're going to go down to like 5% by the end of the year. And I was like, well, what says they're going to go to 5% by the end of the year? So let me ask you a question, Tim.
Yeah.
Is there anything indicating rates are going to go down to 5% anytime soon?
No.
In fact, what's more realistic? Like, is there any indication that rates are going to go down significantly at all? And what do you think would be a indicator that is going to happen, or like what would cause that to happen, or what would cause it not to happen?
So the indication right now is rates are going to continue going up because of inflation and the world economy in general. And Bank of England just raised their rates 0.25 this morning. So that just tells you, world economy. We're not just talking about U.S. Okay, everything's under this inflationary pressure. Now here's the key. Okay, there will be a time where rates will come back down.
Yep.
And the question is where, 4s, maybe 5s, we don't know. The prediction right now is 12 to 18 months, although I think that's a little optimistic. And the reason for that is threefold. Number one, you guys have already seen this, right? The banks are starting to have some financial difficulties because you raise the cost of funds too high. Federal Reserve raises their money cost too high. It'll cause the banks to require more capital, and in turn, they're not going to make any money. It's like lending money out at 4% and you're borrowing it at 5.5 or 6. You're taking a loss, right? So they're going to have to reduce the rates. Number one, really to keep the banks solvent.
Well, you say going to have to, but let me just throw this number out there. Inflation last year. Again, everybody has their different way they measure it, but let's just say they said it was 8%. It's only 3% this year.
Sure.
That's a sustainable number because historic inflation is 2.5% a year or whatever. So we've now supposedly capped inflation to keep it normalized. It seems like the only way to do that was to continue to shoot up interest rates. So is there a scenario that says that even though this is decimating the housing market, even though whatever, if you want to go buy a car or a house, you're going to get crushed, that overall this is a good thing because it's keeping the cost of bread at $1.50 for that white bread?
Wow, that white bread's not $1.50.
Well, the kind that we get is the kind that comes in that blue and white package that has the little squares and it's like tastes like nothing. You know what I mean? The generic white bread.
So here's what's happening, Brian. I mean, so the government changed the way they describe what inflation was. In essence, you and I both know we go to the grocery store and your cart used to be $150. That cart,
So is that like when they changed the definition of a recession, which was what, 3/4 of stagnant or negative growth, and then they changed it to say something else?
Yeah.
And you're saying they changed the definition of inflation.
sure.
But either way, did it still curb would inflation be worse without interest rates being sky high?
Would inflation be worse? I truly don't believe it would.
Really?
I think the federal government is trying to squash down. Everybody says it's inflation, Brian. They're trying to suck some of the cash that they just poured into the American economy, right? In 20 and 21 during COVID, they put too much money out there. Now look at the American savings accounts, Brian. What's happening to the average American savings account? Right? All the money's being sucked out. I mean, there's just no way. There's no place around it. Look at people's pensions. Just losing pensions. I mean, Yellow Trucking went out of business, declared bankruptcy Friday. I mean, the oldest trucking industries, right? So what's happening is inflation is still going up. The definition is just not there. They're raising the rates to suck the cash out of the economy. They actually want to squash the housing industry because houses are not affordable. They're thinking that if we can shut things down. But Brian, are there any houses on the market today? I mean, honestly.
I'm going to show you something really quick, and we'll get into that. Let's see. Get to this, and then this.
The suspense is killing me, Brian. I'm just telling you. What do you got? Oh, dude, there you go.
So my buddy John put this up the other day, and you can look at the number of home inventory. This isn't necessarily the number of sales, but the number of houses available to buy.
Houses for sale. Okay, very good.
Yep. Is at historic lows. We're going back to 1983, and there was more than twice as many houses for sale as there is right now.
So you're telling me that in 1983, our population was significantly less, right? And houses were significantly more affordable because you and I both bought houses in 83, 84, $100,000 bought a house, right?
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute because everybody who bought a house in 1983 talks about how, they kind of do that little thing with their head and they're like, well, interest rates were 12% when I purchased my house in 1983.
Back in the day, as we always say, back in the day.
And it was like when America was better and when we were all better human beings and more responsible, and it was like we had to go uphill both ways. Yeah. It was like this. The facts are that the cost of the house in comparison to your income was a lot less. It was more affordable. I was only making $12 an hour. It's irregardless. The cost of a house today compared to the average American income. And you could say the average American income is higher than it used to be. You could make that argument. I'm not a financial analyst, but I do know that the cost of a house now feels burdensome. It felt ridiculously cheap for a minute. I was watching people buy these waterfront houses for less than $3,000 a month, and I'm actually mad that I didn't buy a much bigger house. But I do. I don't want to complain, but if I was smart, I would have bought, a $600,000 house with a $3,000 mortgage. It would be worth over $1.5 million right now. Wow. But in any case, and this also happens to show the number of realtors. I know a lot of realtors watch our podcast here. So and the thing is, the number they don't show on here is sales. So I feel like this is a little bit misleading because there still are houses that are selling. Inventory is unsold homes, and I know a lot of these houses are under contract and sold just like that. So I think the number of sales would be important here, but I think it does definitely demonstrate that if you're trying to buy a house, there's nothing available. So let me just show you this really quick, and this was 11 months ago, so this would have been September of last year. You and I did a video, right, and we said 10% rates. What will happen to the interest? And we were talking about the end of 2026, rates could be 9.55, and the headline was 10% rates, and it actually gave a breakdown of the next 12, 3 years, but the next 12 months, specifically August of 2023, was supposed to be 7.25%. If we're on a trajectory to get to 9.55 by 2026, and again, no one knows the real future, but where are we at today? I just went to Google and I typed in 30-year fixed interest rates, enter, and here's what pops up. 7.9%. So this guy's telling me the other day, he's like, yeah, I'm thinking about selling my house, blah, blah, blah. And like, I try to keep it real with people.
Sure.
Like, I'm like, listen, I'll just be honest with you. You sell your house, you take all that money, you put it down on a new house. He's like, man, well, I got a 2.7%. I only got $1,800. He's like, Brad, I got $1,800 payment. I was like, okay, but let me just be honest with you. Here's how this goes down. You make 100,000 or 150,000, and you go put it down on a similar size or even a smaller house, and you're carrying a mortgage at 8% interest.
Sure.
That's over 50% higher of a payment only because of the interest alone. Only because, so you buy this. Let's say you sell 300,000. You make 300. Let's just say that you have a $300,000 mortgage,
Right.
and you go get a $300,000 mortgage. From 2.7 to 8, you're going to have more than a 50% higher payment.
Yeah, well, it went from 2.7 to 8, right? I mean, that's almost 3 times.
Yeah.
You know, that's not twice. That's 3 times the payment. What's
Yeah.
happened to the price of houses?
That's the other thing. So house prices have gone way up too. So, everybody loves to, the people that are doing the best are the ones that are retiring, and they're paying cash for their house somewhere else, or they're not buying a house and they're renting, or whatever. They're selling their vacation houses or their second houses. Those people are making the most money. But the people that have to sell a house and buy a house, it feels great to sell it and make all this money and think, wow, I can't believe it's worth that. And then it's like, okay, now go buy one. And, I'm just like, I don't recommend that you sell and buy a house in order to change your lifestyle. It has to be like, and I think people make that decision based on their own situation, right? No one's going to buy and sell a house like, hey, you know what? I think that I don't like living so close to my neighbor. I'm going to go, this other house here has 3 acres. Same house. I'm going to buy my house and sell that one. No, you're not.
You put up a fence.
Yeah.
Yep. That's all there is to it, guys. So Brian, so bring it all in, man. So what's happening? So, we predicted, right? We talked about this, rates being the 8s. Dude, we're almost at 8%. And unfortunately, we don't see any relief today. We will probably see relief in, I think, 18 to 24 months now. And I think it's because of the solvency of the banks. I think we are in a recession already. I mean, you buy a cart of groceries. We talked about this. And I don't care what the inflationary gauge says. Look, you buy a cart of groceries, it's twice what you would have paid just 2 years ago, right?
Well, can I say something about that?
Yeah. We're eating too much soy. I know, Brian. We talked about this earlier. Man.
Americans are like, do research on soy, guys. Don't drink soy milk. All right, and don't eat a lot of soy. Don't eat any tofu, especially if you're a male. Me and Tim were talking about this, but if you go back 100 years and then go back another 100 and then another 100, and you compare the cost of food to the average income, and I believe what you'll find is not only was the cost exorbitant, but the method in which you got your food, because you probably didn't buy it, you probably traded for it, and you grew it and you raised it. And I would argue that even with the $300 grocery cart, it's a fraction of what food you, and I think that's why we all have air conditioning and houses and cars. And one of the reasons why is because we've created systems that make food dirt cheap, all things considered. Okay, a lot of times you'd work all day, and there's places in this world where you work all day just to get enough food to feed your family for the day or the week. Now I could work 1 hour and buy enough food for days, right? If you eat peanut butter and jelly like Tim does, you know what I mean?
I like peanut butter. So,
Yeah.
so we won't see rates coming down until, from a recessionary standpoint, until the federal government steps in. The bank solvency that occurs, and the banks have a lot of control, a lot of hit on that, right? And the last thing is, of course, we have a presidential election coming in play, and you know what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to turn the economy around to make things look better, feel better, be able to afford housing, right? I mean, it's whether it happens before an election or after an election, it's going to be a big emphasis, Brian. Now, question to you is, where are house prices going?
They're going up, and here's the thing. I would like to say that I believe we are approaching a housing crisis from the perspective of affordability, and I think that at this particular moment in time, it doesn't seem to be on the national radar as far as because I think it's fairly new. It's all happened in the past 12 months. 12 months ago, rates were still at like 5.5, and I was like, oh my gosh, because they were 3 at the beginning of that year.
Yeah.
But now that they're 8, and that sets in for a while, and the thing is, people don't move every day. They move like once every 5 to 7 years. But let a year or two go by where people that want to move can't move, and you start to build up this frustration of people that are like taking on 8% mortgages. Because I think it was like the numbers like over 60% of people are under 4%.
Yep, and 90% are under 5.
Yeah, and then there's probably 40 or 50 that are under like 4% or something like that. I think I gave that number wrong. I should have said 6 or something. But in any case, like the large majority of people are sitting on these mortgages. But if you allow 5 years to go by and people find that houses are unaffordable, I think it's going to put a lot of pressure on the housing something. It's going to make house prices come down. It's going to make something. And I feel like that there is a situation where people haven't computed it yet. I was just at a guy's house the other day. He sold his house already. He did one of these cash deals, and he's going to like Tennessee to pick out a house in Florida. And they didn't make a ton of money on the house. And they're trying to finance one when they get there. And I didn't want to say anything because I'm not a part of this transaction. I was just a spectator. But I'm thinking in my head, like, bro, you have a huge awakening. When you go down there and you're like, oh, I like the blue one. And you try to buy it and you figure out what it costs. And it's like $4,000 or $5,000 a month. And you're like, wait a minute. I thought it was going to be $2,000 a month. It's going to be a punch in the head. It is. And it's like, oh, you know what? We'll just go rent.
Yeah, even renting it.
Okay, so here's the problem with rent. You better have like tip-top credit to rent a nice house, and you better have like money because there's no $1,500 rentals. Everybody who ever wants a rental wants $1,500. Look, just stay at $1,000. Okay, well you better find someone on Facebook to rent you their basement bedroom because that's what you're going to get. You're not getting a house for $1,000 or $1,500. They're like $225, $300, $3,500 a month.
It's expensive as house. So I saw an article the other day, and they said we don't expect house prices to come down for 7 to 10 years.
What would cause house prices to go down?
Well, the inventory going up.
What would cause inventory to go up?
A housing crisis? I mean, here's the problem, Brian. Everybody's predicting interest rates are going to go up and housing's going to slow down. But there's such a huge pent-up demand, right? Yeah,
that doesn't mean that prices go down. When you have scarcity of a thing, it makes the value of it go up. It's like, oh, we're going to make the cost of John Deere tractors go down by making less of them. That doesn't make sense. Like it would probably make them be worth more money for people who really want a John Deere tractor.
So, Brian, what are we seeing? We're seeing parents staying in their houses. They're not selling them. They're 2.5. We see the kids moving in with the parents.
Yep.
Now we've got two incomes, two families living in one house. We're seeing the parents stay in their house longer. I saw an article that said reverse mortgages are going to explode because of the older baby boomers. They got all this equity, but they don't have a lot of savings because they lost, right? They're going to do reverse mortgages, be able to pay the mortgage in full, maybe receive cash, maybe receive payments for the rest of their life.
It's mostly a terrible idea, in my opinion. Most of the time, not all the time. Most of the time, it's a terrible idea. It's the problem I have with that is that it's like buying. I'm trying to think what would be a good comparison. You go buy a car. And when you walk in, what's the way you negotiate for a car? How do you like what is the salesperson focusing on. You don't buy cars like this, Tim, so you probably don't know. So I'm not going to fault you for not knowing this.
Right.
But most people know the answer. When you go to buy a car, how does the car salesperson negotiate with you? Just guess.
What kind of payment are you?
Exactly. You got it right, Tim. They talk about the payment, right? And then you end up in a less than ideal situation because you don't understand math. You don't understand how the structure of loans work and how long-term benefits versus, like a payment is going to affect you and what that's really going to do to you when you have negative equity in your car for the first, 4 of your 5 years you own it, etc. I think that the way that reverse mortgages are sold, it feels similar. It's like you get the money. It's like,
Here's
yeah.
the key. How many of us, how many of the seniors have $200,000-$300,000 in equity? They have nowhere to go, Brian. They can't move anywhere. You just told me that. They only owe $100,000 on their house. And you're like, you know what? I can do a mortgage on the house. It's a reverse mortgage. I can pay off that first mortgage. I can get 50 grand, pay all my credit cards off, and then get an extra $1,000 a month for the longest time I live in that house. I'm just gonna live in the house forever, man. I'm never moving anything, so I don't have to worry about it.
There is a way that it does work. There is a way that it does make sense. I'm not gonna lie. Like there's a way that if you live a really long time, it's kind of like a life insurance policy. There's a way to win that game, but most of the time it's structured for you to lose, which is understandable.
Here's what I'm going to back up. You lose when the values go down, but if the values are anticipated to continue to go up 3 to 5% a year,
how does that make sense? If they go up 10% a year, you can't benefit from that equity because the bank owns your house now.
The value keeps going up. You might borrow this much money, but what's happening is the value is going up. Your mortgage balance going up, but they're going up. They're going up simultaneously. So you're not really losing. Brian, here's the thing. I have no payment for 10 or 15 years. Okay? I didn't make a single mortgage payment for 15 years. I let the house work for me. Seriously, think about it. House is working for me. I got no payments.
We would have to do a class on this, Tim, because I was like, there was a period of time where, and can you do a reverse mortgage?
And we hit 62 and a half.
No, I'm saying not you personally. I mean, as a mortgage guy, do you sell reverse mortgages?
I have channels.
Exactly. That's when I was in the mortgage business. There was like the guy that I worked for. Then they brought that product in, and we could do them. And when I looked at it, I barely understood it, but it looked to me like a lot of the situations it wasn't going to benefit the person. But I also saw where there was a scenario that if it was like you're going to stay there forever and benefit, you're never going to move, you have enough equity that however much you're getting per month actually changes your life. Because the other problem is you're doing that at 60. The amount you get changes based on how old you are. So if you're doing this at like 62 or 65, you're getting $700 a month. It's like, man, that's such a small amount of money. And in 20 years, it's going to not even pay your light bill. Okay. And now you've done mortgaged your house. You have nothing.
Here's how I'm going to turn it around for you. Ready? So, you're 65. You got Social Security. That's it. You have a little 401k, $100,000 if you're lucky.
Yep.
That's all you got saved up, man. You got the house. House has got $300,000 of equity. I could sell the house and move south somewhere, right? But away from my children and my grandchildren, where I can stay in the house, pay off the debt, pay off my mortgage, have a cash flow coming in, and ready for this one, and probably one of the 2 kids is going to move in with me, okay? And we're going to live in the house forever. There's no reason to move. It's kind of a win-win. It really is. I never have to worry about anything. And so instead of paying $1,500 a month on my mortgage payment, I can now take that $1,500 and I can invest it if I want to, right? I can put it into some kind of stock or something of that caliber. I can put it in some kind of an interest rate.
Yeah, I mean, in Tim Murphy's world, people who live right. I mean, again, it could make sense. I'm just saying. I think realistically, the way it normally gets sold to somebody and the way they end up resulting from, I think the way that it all works itself out. If you looked at it, and again, people got themselves in these situations to need to do it in the first place. We're not ideal. I get it.
But Brian, I think the majority of Americans are in a pickle.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's true.
I've changed my whole attitude on this, man. Years ago, I did not like the product, but now the more I look at it, the more I see the benefit. Okay, I really do.
Yeah,
Now,
no, I could look
ask
at
me,
it
how many
again.
have I done personally in the last 10 years?
0.
Zero, exactly. Okay.
Yeah,
I may have referred
right.
2 or 3 that I felt were reasonable. Most people I talked out of it because it didn't make sense then.
Well, if you're a real estate agent and
Yeah.
you're faced with this situation, you feel like rates are going to go up. It makes sense to me to think that at some point the number of sales is probably going to plateau. It's not going to go to 0 ever.
It's less than 1 million right now.
I know, but it's also, that's not sales, that's inventory. I think the number of sales in the DC metro area is going to continue to churn. One of the things we have going for us is, like 6 or 8 of the 10 most affluent counties in the United States of America are in the DC metro area. And one of them,
County, Calvert County.
yeah, one of them's the one that I live in.
Come on down.
No,
Exactly right. Yeah.
St. Mary's and Charles didn't make the list. Calvert did, but I think it's because of I think there's a playing of the numbers there. It doesn't mean that we're rich, but in any case,
Brian, you live in Calvert County.
that's what I'm saying. Like, but I don't. This is not you don't see Lambos driving down the street here. I think the way you have to look at that is it's like a per capita. There's no low income housing here, and there's very, very few low income like households. What you have is a very upper middle class that's across the board, and that's what keeps the number so high. So you have other places where there's way more money, but you also have low income housing like tucked into the corner
Well,
that
you have
offsets it.
complexes. Let's call it what it is, man.
They just applied to put the guy who used to own Holiday Inn, who sold it to be a nursing home, just applied to put condos in Solomon's, and every single county commissioner was like, nope, we don't want that here. We do not want any high density housing in Calvert County. Get on down the road. It's never happening here. So to the number, every single one of them was like, I got voted to keep Calvert country. It's like, all right.
But when you can't find employees to come work at your office, then call me. You know what I'm talking about?
I mean, they can. Everybody's doing fine here. We got the nuclear power plant and Dominion paying all of our taxes, so we have low taxes. It's whatever. I'm not going to get into that. But let me just ask you quickly about if you're a real estate agent or a mortgage lender, and the number of sales is starting to plummet here, and going back to that chart where for the first time ever, there was a period of time where there was like 3 or 4 houses for every real estate agent, and now there's
One.
there's like double this guy right here, right? So there's 1.6 million realtors and 1 million houses for sale. So there's 1.5 realtors for every house for sale.
Yeah.
That means that, and there's always been a scenario in which it's a 90-10 where the majority of real estate agents don't do any deals. We all know that.
So what's going to happen, Brian?
Well, what do you think like advice is, or what do you think is going to happen? I mean, I feel like the number of sales that I've done has gone down. I'm definitely not hurting. I'm not.
But what's this average sale price happen to you?
Well, it's gone way up, way
I
up.
have to sell as many houses, right? It's still
Right.
a win-win. I think, Brian, what's going to happen is I think the whole real estate industry is going to pivot. I think prices are going to continue moving up. I think we are going to see, I know it's crazy to say, reverse mortgages being utilized to purchase homes as well as refinance.
Yeah.
And people don't ever consider that anymore. I think it's going to happen. I think we're going to see an exit of a good third of the real estate agents in the industry. They're going to leave. They're going to say, "I'm going."
Everybody keeps saying that, but I don't see it happening. Like, do you see a lot of people getting out? Now, you know way more realtors than I do, obviously.
Okay, so I'm talking to a young lady the other day, and I said, "How's it going?" She said, "Tim, I need to make this deal work. Got the contract. I got the client under contract. I'm working it." And then I said to her, "So how'd you get the referral?" She got it from a third party. She's giving away 40% of her pay. Then she has to split the remaining commission with the real estate agency. So on this $400,000 house with a 2.5% co-op, she's giving $4,000 away to the referral source. She's keeping $3,000, and the remaining $3,000 is going to the brokerage. This is her second sale this year. Ryan, This is her second sale. Fortunately, her partner, her spouse, is working. He's making money. He's bringing it in. She's a mom. They got 2 kids, but they were their whole goal was 12 houses a year. I think she's going to make 2.
Yeah, that's the story of that's actually, even in a good market, that's probably the majority of real estate agents do follow that path. And I think,
So I think we're going to see Are you getting ready? I think we're going to see this huge growth in teams. I think the listing side is going to explode. You and I both had this conversation. I think we're going to see a shift in the way commissions are paid. I think we're going to see some massive pivot in this industry. I really do. And that's going to be the challenge. It really is. It's going to be where listing agents hold all the gold. They hold the houses, they hold the inventory, they make the rules.
What would be your advice if your son or daughter was like, "Hey, I want to become a realtor, and I'm definitely going to stick with it for at least 3 years." And no matter what would you advise?
Join a team or or have a mentor. Honestly, Brian, you and I both know how many young people we talk to, and they come to work with you. They got these huge goals, and they're gonna kill it. They're gonna crush it, and then after making calls for 30 days, they're like, I'm gonna go ahead and sell saddlebags on the internet. Right?
Oh yeah, I got so many stories, but I don't want to start talking about, because everybody could figure it out who I was talking about. But yeah, that's a true thing, and your advice is great to join a team. But let's say you're talking to an agent who's been doing it for 5 years, and their business is struggling right now, and they're looking at the future going, "Man, I can't wait for this to be over." And you're like, "Hey, it's not over. It's not even going to get better. It's going to get worse." What's your advice? Dig in hard. What do you do?
Yeah, 3 things. Let's talk about this. Number one, people don't work their data properly. They don't work their CRM. They've got to really go deeper into their CRM system, deeper in social media. There's no question about it. And then they need to get another job.
Another job.
They need another source of income, Brian.
Okay, let's be frank about that. Okay, if you're doing 2 deals a year, you have a little bit of time.
That's exactly right. Exactly. But Brian, look, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, so you get a second job. You've got a really good practice started, but things have slowed down, and they're not expected to come back up for a couple of years. Okay, I don't want to go into poverty, and I don't want to go bankrupt, but I'm probably going to have a second job. Now, my advice
was going to differ from you there. Here's what I would advise you to do. I would advise you to double down on all the things you should be doing, and tighten up the waist on the spending.
Yep.
And give it some time. We are heading into the slowest time of the year, and then it's going to continue to fall off the cliff until January. Like, we're going to slowly drip down this hill. However, I would say, if you need money in the next 90 days, you got to come up with a side hustle to do it. I wouldn't get another job just yet. I just feel like once you go down that path, you never come back. I don't know anybody who's ever like, yeah, and then I went and got a job for a while. Now I'm back in real estate and I'm crushing it. It's like, if they're crushing it, it's because, you know what I mean?
Dual career, Brian. Look, at the end of the day, honestly,
I'm going to say no, Tim. I'm going to say no. No dual career. If you got to go dual career, you just call me, give me your database, and go off into the sunset and be whatever you are. I don't like dealing with dual career realtors who I can't get a hold of during the day because they're at work. For someone to say to me, I couldn't talk to you because I was at work, makes me want to just like slam the phone into their face, because it's like, listen, this is your responsibility, and if we need to solve problems, like, you owe these people, you're getting paid so much money, like, stop it. So yeah, I'm going to differ there too. I'm just going to say, like, maybe just turn the keys in to let it go.
Or you're continue to work your practice and like you said, double down. Okay, I'm going to go from 2 houses to 4. You're not going to survive on 4. Now, I like your advice of, get better by joining a team, by getting into some leadership, right?
Yep.
That's the win-win, Brian. I mean, I have lenders that come to me right now and like, Tim, what am I supposed to do? And we talk about this, and they're making, I hate to say this, right? Okay, here's a good lender this year will close $5 million for the entire year. That's $50,000 in income, Brian. You can't survive on that. You really can't.
No.
and the house inventory is not going to change, right? So if it's not, hey, so Brian, here's my question to you: where will interest rates be by the end of the year? And we should record this and make it in the very end.
Say 8.5.
I think Fed's going to raise the rates at least one more time.
Yeah.
I think 8.5 is probably spot on. I really do. I hope it doesn't get any worse.
It's brutal, man. People don't know it yet because they haven't had to deal with it. Like the percentage of the population that's actually contemplated what 8% interest rates really mean to them is a small fraction. Once time goes on and people start to really have exposure to 8% interest rates in the housing market, it's going to become like, oh my gosh.
There you go, man.
All right, Tim.
All right. Hey, we're going to make it happen. All right.
I appreciate your advice, sir.
Done, man. I'll catch up with you, brother.